So we are starting up our 5 o'clock panel a little early, and we appreciate, again, everyone coming by today and patronizing the artists and vendors. And our panel right now is called The Audition is Always On. And our guest for today's panel is Cheryl Rhoads. Cheryl, thank you so much for being with us today. So Cheryl has won Best Actress awards in both Chicago and Los Angeles. She has starred, written, directed, and produced on network television and in films, working in front of the camera and behind the scenes for over 21 years in Hollywood. There we go. Cheryl has co-starred with Ben Affleck, Tracey Ullman, Arsenio Hall, and has guest starred on numerous network television shows. She is best known for portraying Mother Goose in the Mother Goose Video Treasury. CEO of the Cheryl Felicia Rhoads Northern Virginia Acting School located in Falls Church, Virginia, she has taught over 5,000 actors in the Washington, D.C. area. Cheryl also casts theater projects, movies, voiceovers, and on-camera commercials. Please welcome, again, Cheryl Rhoads.
Thank you. Is it Arthur there? Hey, Arthur!
So we actually have a video that we are hoping to show. If there are no...
I'm safe out there.
He's had a bad afternoon. Better make this a short visit, okay?
Nurse, where's Larry? Did they take him to another room?
Eric, no one told you?
Told me what?
Larry died last night.
What?
I'm so sorry.
These aren't bad,
Great. Ring them right up.
but I don't love them. Let's put them in the maybe pile.
Ma'am, my back is killing me. Unfortunately, not fast enough.
I just don't see anything I like.
You ought to be sitting on this stool.
Don't open your presents. Do something.
No, she just got here. Don't open your presents yet. Hey, let's have a toast, okay?
Yeah.
All right, okay? To the future Mrs. Bobby Tully. Roses are red, velvet is black. If you're lucky, may you spend most of your marriage on your bed.
Hey, Froggy.
You got any good reading for me?
I just finished one. It's a sizzler.
Yeah, I'll give this to Charlie Wittenberg when I'm done.
Would anybody like to volunteer to go first?
No.
Well, it'd be my pleasure. Dear, I hope you're not going to be like Barbara Walters, are you, and get all personal and make me cry. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So that was actually really interesting because I remember some of those episodes distinctively. So that's pretty awesome. Nice to meet you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So before we, sort of delve into how you got into acting and being a producer, tell us a little bit about where you're from and,
I'm from Chicago originally, and I got my start at Chicago's Second City Comedy Troupe, and my teacher, Josephine Forsberg, trained Bill Murray and Stephen Carroll and just about everybody big you can mention. And I was half of a comedy team there, and an actor by the name of McLean Stevenson, who was on the old TV show MASH, saw our show, and he brought us out to Hollywood. And Arsenio Hall and I had performed together at nightclubs. And so the first big job in Hollywood was Arsenio and I and my partner Doug. We all wrote together for the Motown show for Smokey Robinson. And then I got to perform with Ray Charles and all these folks. I was the only woman writer on the show writing comedy stuff. And from there on in Hollywood, I started just acting, and when acting wasn't happening, I was an agent, and I worked for the Animation Film Society. Know a lot of people in animation. And, so that's how I started.
Now, was it elementary school? Was it drama club? Was it high school? What sort of made you say, the typical academic route was not for you?
When I was 4 years old, I'm much younger than my older brothers and sisters. There's a 20-year age difference. And we came to Washington, D.C. because my brother was going to Washington and Lee. And the older brothers and sisters, nobody was paying attention to me. They were all having dinner. This is at the Mayflower Hotel downtown. They used to have an orchestra in those days. And I just went up and asked the orchestra leader if I could sing. And my family said, all of a sudden the orchestra leader said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Cheryl Rhoads, age 4, is going to sing Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo from Cinderella." And there I was with the mic, ready to go. And my brother Paul said, "For God's sakes, get her down before she gets a contract." And so from then, I did children's theater. I auditioned for plays in grade school, high school, the whole thing. And then I was a theater major in college at the University of Iowa in Iowa City.
So, as a child, who were some of the actors or musicians or comedians that, or I guess specifically comedians, because you did, go to Second City.
Right.
And so where did that
I
start?
was very blessed because I later on got to work with some of the comedians that I admired as a child. A lot of people here are maybe too young to remember who Steve Allen was. Steve Allen gave David Letterman and Johnny Carson and all these guys their start. He created The Tonight Show on NBC. And so when I was a little girl, I used to watch Steve Allen and Mike Nichols and Elaine May. Mike Nichols, famous director for The Graduate, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, several top movies. And Steve Allen and I later on became friends in LA because I was invited to be on this Parents Television Council because I played Mother Goose. And at one point, Steve and I were at lunch together, and I said, I can't believe this. And I was Nancy Cartwright, who you guys know as Bart Simpson. Various folks, we were going to be at this children's television festival, and the gal who was Nancy, was some other gal, was supposed to introduce Steve, and they couldn't show up. So they had me introduce Steve, and so I was trying to make up my, like what you're doing, I was trying to think of my intro on the fly, and all of a sudden I was going through my cards trying to think of jokes, and all of a sudden I heard Steve Allen said, "Sounds great, Cheryl." And I almost started to tear up because I thought of the 4-year-old me, that thought he was so cool and he was such a big star, back in the late 50s, 60s, and all that time. In fact, my brothers, he had a running joke, Steve Allen, they would call him Hey Ho Steve Areno. So when I was little, my brothers would call me Hey Ho Cheryl Areno, and I'd get really mad, not knowing they were just being really hip. And so anyway, when I was introducing Steve, and Steve thought what I had to say was funny, I thought, my gosh, what would the 4-year-old me think? But anyway, so loved him. I used to watch the Ed Sullivan Show, and I loved all the comedians there. And in fact, though I mentioned Mike Nichols and Elaine May. Mike Nichols and Elaine May have written so many stuff, but Elaine May used to do this character. You guys with cell phone wouldn't know what this is about, but she'd play a telephone operator where Mike Nichols had lost his money in the phone booth, and she'd say, "Sir, the telephone company doesn't have your dime. We don't want your dime. We don't need your dime. The telephone company is wealthy. We don't need your dimes." So I heard that when I was about 7, 8. I started doing that voice all the time. And my mother said, "Cheryl, stop it. We don't want to hear it anymore." But when I was 21 and I went for my big first commercial audition, it was for Xerox. And they were doing a thing with a shredding machine, and 60 Minutes at that time were doing all these searing exposés on businesses. And if Mike Nichols showed up with a camera crew, the business knew they were in trouble. And so that was the gag of this commercial. So a secretary is supposed to come in and say, "Sir, there's Mr. Mike Wallace here to see you." And all of a sudden you hear the shredding machine going on. So that was the commercial. So here are all these other young women auditioning, and it's a voiceover, so no one knows what I'm going to look like. So I just decided to do my Elaine May voice, and it goes, "Sure, there's Mr. Mike Wallace here to see you." And they all cracked up, and that's how I got my first voiceover job. And I just want to insert here, because this is like an animation crowd and everything. How many people here know who June Foray is, or Dawes Butler? June Foray was Rocky the Flying Squirrel. And Dawes Butler, Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Captain Crunch, all these guys. these were all mentors of mine. June Foray just died at the age of 100 years old a couple of months ago. And my friend Will Ryan, and Will and I used to go out. You would know Will as Scrooge McDuck, and he played Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh. He was one of the Goofies, you know, as my brother always said, they had mixed feelings that I was dating Goofy at one point. But Will went to the Academy Awards with June Foray, and Paul McCartney gets into the elevator, and Will, without missing a beat, said, Sir McCartney, I'd like you to meet June Foray, the voice of Rocky the Flying Squirrel. Paul McCartney went nuts. He was so excited because they had it in England. And he says, oh my God, June Foray. And he says, here I am with Paul McCartney of the Beatles and Wings and June Foray, Rocky the Flying Squirrel. And that's the thing, when you're in LA, you get to meet lots of famous people and get to work with them. So I went off the path there, but since it's a cartoon crowd, or animation, animation.
Since you got us to LA, what was it like being, I guess for lack of a better term, a working actress? Mm-hmm. It's always those actors and actresses that you see in your favorite TV shows, mm-hmm. in secondary, tertiary roles,
right.
And you're just like, I know that person, kind of like I recognized you in one of them. And what is that like, kind of being one of those actresses where every single week or month or day, you're on a different set, interacting with different people?
Well, it's fun, naturally, and I was telling one of my acting students came with me today, Frank Bruckner. Hey, Frank. And I was telling him that, like, on Facebook, I've been catching up with an old friend of mine, David Paymer. You guys would know from the movie The American President. He's been in everything, but he plays the guy when Michael J. Fox is hanging up on this congressman. He wants him to vote a certain way, and he hangs up on him. He goes, oh, well, Jared's a no. And David says, well, I certainly hope so. Otherwise, we need to work on our people skills. And he was in Homicide, a million movies. And David is one of those character actors. Another friend, Derek McGrath, we did this show with Ben Affleck, Against the Grain. And you see these guys, he's on Hallmark all the time, a lot of folks. What it's like is you get used to it. Because the first time I saw a celebrity at a 7-Eleven was an actress named Ruth Buzzy, who was big on the TV show Laugh-In back in the 60s. But people like Lorenzo Music, you guys would know him as Garfield the Cat. And Lorenzo and I were great friends. Paul Winchell, June Foray, a gal named Lucille Bliss, they were all the Smurfs, when you guys were all little growing up. And Paul Winchell also invented the artificial heart. He was this big animation guy, ventriloquist and everything, but he had all this interest in technical stuff, and he did that. But I would meet these people, and you get used to knowing people like that. And because I also in LA was also an agent and a casting director, and I got to direct people like Demi Moore or any of you guys who ever saw The Magnificent Seven, James Coburn, famous actor, and I got to work with a lot of people like that. And you saw, too, why certain people worked and why others didn't, as far as their commitment to doing stuff. So it was a great education, and I consider myself very blessed. And at the Animation Film Society, too, you would see people like, oh my gosh, the guy who played Boo Boo with Yogi the Bear, Don, blanking on his last name, you guys might know, but he played Boo Boo Bear to when Dawes Butler was playing Yogi. And these guys, the animation voiceover guys, are kind of the MBAs of the acting world, because they'll come in and they'll do a bunch of voice jobs and they'll leave. One of my students, Nico Greedham, is the new Yellow Power Ranger. And he's right here from, Woodbridge and Manassas. And he's going to be in that. And, a lot of the animation people out there are just people who fell into it. They loved animation like you guys, or at festivals like this. And they did lots of voices. And sometimes that's one thing I have my acting students do. I'll have them imitate family members. A lot of you guys, how many of you ever heard of the name Dan Castellaneta? Yeah, he's Homer Simpson, okay? And so Dan is an old friend for 35 years, and Dan is just doing a relative. I won't say which one. Kind of extreme version.
As Homer?
As Homer, right. And he and his wife, Deb LaCosta, we were in a comedy troupe together, and Deb and Dan wrote a lot of the episodes of The Simpsons as well. But nicest guy in the world, just fantastic, and did a lot of theater. But I tell you, I love the voiceover people because they're not on camera as much. Although Dan once on Law and Order, L.A. Law, played a guy who thought he was Homer Simpson, and of course the joke was because he really was Homer Simpson. But a lot of these folks all studied under the same teachers like Dawes Butler and folks like that. Right, Frank? Anyway, I'm just giving you a hard time.
So, still staying in Hollywood, what are some of your memorable experiences out in Hollywood, either TV or film or in the voice booth?
Okay. Well, so many, but one thing that I was, I guess, on the Tracey Ullman show, and they had a great hot band, and Dan Castellaneta was on that show too. That's where The Simpsons started, as an offshoot of the Tracey Ullman show. And Tracey is on HBO right now. But they had this band, and I started like rocking out and dancing to the band, and all of a sudden I hear this guy going, "Yeah, go, go!" And it was James Brooks, who was the director, and and I was all embarrassed. But I've had so many cool experiences in Hollywood with various, I'm just, from Tom Hanks. One thing, this panel is called The Audition is Always Going On. And one of the things is you got to realize that people are just people, okay? And I saw an actor so blow it at one point. He apparently had done summer stock with Tom Hanks, and we were all working on this special. It was a salute to Steven Spielberg. And anyway, this guy goes up to Tom Hanks, and he says, "Hi, Tom, do you remember me? We did this summer stock deal." And he said, "Oh, yeah, hi, how are you? What's going on?" The guy starts to tell all the hard luck stories that had happened to him, one after another. "Oh, I wasn't as lucky as you, and I did it." And it's like, it was like watching a horror movie where you're kind of going like, no, don't open the door, because you saw Tom Hanks's eyes start to glaze over as this guy is going one negative thing after another. And this is the thing. The audition is always going on. Like some of you, I know, you're doing business right now and stuff, and that's great. That's what you're here to do. But you never know sometimes where a great opportunity will come to you when you least expect it. And I got the TV series that I did with Ben Affleck because I went to a family wedding in Iowa. And in the family wedding in Iowa, the cousin of the bride was a writer, and his brother was working with Steven Spielberg. And I was just listening to his stories, and we were having fun talking. And he said, "You should call my brother when you get out to LA." And I did, and we were just chatting along, and I was telling him how I had turned down a project that I thought was too edgy, and this guy did a lot of Hallmark stuff and everything. And we were just having fun talking, and all of a sudden, you know what? He said, "You'd be really good for this part in this TV pilot we're getting ready to do for NBC." I said, "Okay," because people say stuff like that all the time. And then I get a call to go to Warner Brothers to go with this audition, and still I'm thinking, oh, well, this is just with a casting director, and it's a pre-thing. I walk in, and there's about 40 people in the room, and it was what they call a network call, and there are all these executives from Warner's and NBC sitting there, and I look around the room, and I say, "Well, hello," It's like I had no idea, and they all started laughing. And then I did my audition, and also I got to tell you another thing. One of the other actresses going for the role was somebody I had cast because, see, I've worn hats on, literally on both sides. I'd been a producer at America's Funniest People, and I'd seen this comedian who I thought was great. She was at the audition, and the TV show was taking place in Texas, and I thought, oh, she's really from Texas. She'll be great. But I could do a Texas accent. And I could just, and I did a lot of voiceover work, and I was kind of imitating Ross Perot at that time. And I wound up getting the role. And I remember the producer, my contact there, says, Warner Brothers and NBC made the decision. I didn't. I wanted them, to choose what would go on. Hang on. Does anybody have a glass of water? Yeah, James. Excuse me. So many wonderful opportunities came to me when I was making other plans. And this is just for anybody who's interested in acting here. There was a rumor, I lived at the Oakwood Apartments in Los Angeles, and there was this rumor among all these stage moms that Steven Spielberg was on the property. So these women were like the T-Rexes in Jurassic Park. They were kind of going, kind of looking around for Steven Spielberg. Meanwhile, the mother of one of my students, she said, it would be great to meet him, but I got things to do. She had to go to the cleaners, and she had her son with her. They went to the cleaners, so guess who they run into? Steven Spielberg. Well, all the other mothers are like hunting around the pool and everything. And they chatted, said her son was an actor, exchanged cards and everything. So often you might think your big opportunity is going to be here, but I feel like God is going, nope, look over here. And that's what's happened to me so often, my best opportunities. And I have a million Hollywood stories, but I want you to ask your next question, but I have a theater one I'll tell you later.
Obviously the name of the panel is The Audition is Always On, and you just touched on, some of the things that can happen for actors and actresses,
right,
when they least expect an opportunity to present itself.
Right.
So aside from always being on, I guess you could say, and never closing yourself off to a potential opportunity, what are some other deal breakers or deal makers for an actor or actress?
All right, a deal breaker is lack of follow through. I am shocked at how many people blow opportunities by simply not returning an email, not following through. I had a student who was a virtual lock on a job that paid $4,000. And he skimmed his email. He said, oh, I'll read it later. He finally looked at it 4 days later, and it was a time-sensitive audition. And he came and goes, oh, Cheryl, I'm so sorry, is it too late? And I said, yeah, it was a 24-hour turnaround. Also, not believing in your dreams can be the deal breaker. I had somebody the other day who she was having all these excuses of why, it was racial, it was because she was a woman, whatever. And I said, well, first of all, I've had over 50% of my students have been of your race. I've had over 50% of your women. And you've got to feel that you're calling, like all you guys here who are loving animation, or loving the various things you do. I have to tell you, guys, I am old enough that I was at opening night of Star Wars in 1977 in Chicago on a date. Went to the first showing. I had a friend that was a big sci-fi thing, and I saw it. And the minute they did the crawl, I said, oh my God, my brother's got to see this. My brother was an Illinois state senator. He was 29. He was the youngest senator in the legislature. But he loved science fiction. He'd been a big Star Trek kind of thing. And I said, oh, Mark, we got to go see Star Wars. We were there at Sunday matinee, and the minute that crawl went, he said, I love this movie already. And I said, I know. So anyway, 1977, so that is 40 years ago. But I was 2. No, I was a little older. But anyway, that thing about the audition of things, the deal breaker, being late. I always tell my students, 15 minutes earlier on time, you're late. Follow through. I was a producer on America's Funniest People. And I had a comedian that kept sending me his, postcards. And I said, keep sending it. Send it like once a month. Finally, after about a year, I had something for him. And it's so often they're just simple things. Please, thank you. Are you courteous? I always tell my students, how can you help? How can you be of service? Today, James Whitley, the fabulous James Whitley here, one of the founders, Johnny Kahn here. James is a terrific actor and camera guy, producer, all that stuff.
He's
and
modest.
he asked me if I could come out and do this today. Now, I'm in a movie right now. I'm filming a movie called Billy and Blaze that's going to be in the theaters in the fall. It's filming here in Virginia. There's so many opportunities here. And so I've been crazy busy. Plus, I've had over 5,000 students at my school in Falls Church. But James asked me if I could come and do this, and I said, absolutely. Because James is one of those follow-through guys that have come through for me. So you want to, I always tell my students, think, how can I help? I don't mean how can you kiss up. How can you help? How can you be of service? Like you're being of help today to help them with this whole deal. And that's the thing. People, they want you on their set. If you're somebody they know they can count on, you'll be early, you'll be heads up, you follow through, you return calls, you know, and they're simple things. Do as you would have done to you. But that is what the celebrities I've worked with, the real successes. You know, June Foray, who is idolized in Hollywood. I mean, the Variety did this big write-up when she passed away last month, 100 years old. And, you know, and she'd been working forever, but June always returned phone calls, would mentor people, help other people. And when a student of mine was a big star on, what is it? They don't even do it anymore, but it was started with the V, the quick little short films. What? Vine, thank you. Matthew Espinosa was a big star on Vine, and he was one of my students. And Matthew, I went to an opening night of this movie he did, Be Somebody, when they showed it out here. And, you know, I said to him, now that you've had the success, you help somebody else. And I coached him on the movie. Nico Greedham was one of the top 10 on So You Think You Can Dance, and he's the guy who's the Yellow Power Ranger right now. Another one of my students, Sloane Siegel, is on Amazon on a series called Gorder McGibbons of Normal Street. And also Jacob Sartorius. I don't know if any of you guys know Jacob. He's been, you know, he was my student for a couple of years. And I say, help other people. In fact, James Whitley knew Jacob. He used to sit and chat with his mom while he was waiting for the adult class to start, and James was doing the teen class. And so, anyway, there's simple things, but to also, in following your dreams, I have a production company. I have my business cards out here, both for my school and for my production company. My production company is called Next Indicated Action. And it's because if you just do the next indicated action, you're being led down the path you're supposed to be led on. And starting out as an actress, I mean, I did musicals and dramas and everything. I never knew I'd work for the Animation Film Society. It's because I started dating Goofy, you know. I didn't know I would do all this voiceover work. Well, it's just because I imitated that lady Elaine May when I was a little kid, you know, and various things. And then when I was a producer at ABC for America's Funniest People, I just loved to connect people up. So they sent me all around the country seeing comedians. So things that are natural to you are things that are going to lead you to that destiny for you to be a success.
So we only have about a minute left.
I'm sure I go on.
But last question very quickly, and I don't mean to be negative per se, but not everyone's got it. So those who want to be involved, you know, maybe want to move to New York, maybe want to move to Hollywood, be involved in the entertainment and film and television industry, how can those people who, you know, who are in our area, how can they kind of get started in this industry, even if they're not voiceover acting or acting?
You might not have it as a performer, but I had a friend who was a top executive at Disney. We met in acting class. And she was a good actress, but she wasn't, you know, she didn't have the drive for that, but she was really good in production and all that stuff. And I encourage people, there are so many opportunities here in Virginia right now where you know, not just film schools, but there's a thing called, if you go to my website, I list different things. There's a thing called, not Metro Center, but DC Metro, that lists all these theater opportunities, film companies that are doing stuff, Central Casting, Brian Dragonuk lists all these companies. There are people, there's the 48-hour film festival, and they have animation as well as short movies, stuff like that, coming to something like GeronniCon. You know, and afterwards, you know, please come up and talk to me and say hi. You know, Frank, my student who's out there who was nice enough to give me a ride here, Frank's an Army guy and a martial arts guy, and I wanted him to meet James, you know, because, you know, he had the martial arts thing in background. I matchmake 8 couples into marriage, by the way. I love to introduce people. And so I was going to say is, if you want to do something, that next indicated action, you'll say, okay, well, how do I get into production? You say, oh, well, like, ask me, like, about the movie I'm doing, you know, or you know, you come to something like that and you say, okay, well, can I be a production assistant on set? Can I help? There are all these web series going on, as I say, and I mentioned 48-Hour Film Festival, to see, again, how can you help? And when you think, how can I help? It's not a question of being a negative. You might just have a different path to getting there. And then lo and behold, I have an acting student, a friend, who was supposed to move out to LA in the fall, and things fell through. This one thing didn't happen. And so, but then with the fires that all just happened in Los Angeles, right in the area where there was the most damage, that was right where he and his wife were going to buy property. I said, did you send a thank you note to the person who did not come through with the job? And I just believe that if you keep doing the next indicated action and looking, you know, whether it's central casting or whatever, you will find your niche. You will. And I think that too many people go, oh, well, that's too big. I can't do that. Do little doable steps. Little tiny steps. That perseverance isn't winning the long race. It's winning little short races. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
And it's a great place to wrap up. So Cheryl, thank you again so much for
Thank
being
you.
with us today. Everyone, please give Cheryl Rhoads a round of applause
Thank
for her
you.
insight. And I'm assuming that you are currently accepting students at your acting
I'm
school?
currently accepting students. The class we're going to do in January is going to be a monologue demo training class where you'll come off with a monologue, a videotape that we can send to producers. Also, I have a TV show on Fairfax Cable right now, famous characters from history, where I have actors of all ages playing famous people at turning points. James plays Yul Brynner, who was in King and I, believe it or not, does a great job. And it's playing 27 times on Channel 10, Fairfax Cable. You know, and you never know who's going to see you. I had a hairdresser come up and say, oh my God, you're the history lady. So please come see me. I've got cards, and if I can help, great. And if you're in an area where I can't help you, I'll send you to somebody who can help you if I can't.
Thank you so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, GeronniCon, for joining us for our last panel of the day.